Well, it is Monday, and that can only mean I'm going to hop on StreamYard here with somebody. And today, my unlucky victim, guest, is the one and only Layla. Layla codes it. Hi, Layla. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Nate. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I am so delighted that we finally made this happen. This has been
Yay.
in the planning stages for how many years have you been on the team now? 2 years.
Yeah, coming up to 2 years. So
That's hard for me to get my head wrapped around. I'm not going to lie. How is it possible that it's been 2 years?
it's that COVID time dilation effect, I guess.
Yeah. Clearly, that is hard to believe. But yeah, we're here. We're here finally. See, I knew it was going to happen, Layla. It's just a matter of finding the perfect moment. So, and I did this
Which is
very
now.
cleverly right after you switched over to daylight saving time, aka summertime, which I think is a better name. So, welcome to summertime. We've been here for a couple weeks. The weather, the water's great. Come on in.
Yeah, we call it British summertime, you see. So we call it summertime. It's all good.
And I think that's a better name for it. I really do.
Mm.
Because you get these arguments about daylight saving or savings, and it's like, whatever. Nobody knows
Which way does that mean?
I don't know. It just is what it is. But anyway, thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. I'm excited to have another excuse to hang out with you. I guess we should have just live streamed our conversation from last Monday when we rambled for like 2.5 hours. That probably would have been just fine too. But we'll do it officially and with what I qualify for my banner art, and away we go. Let me start where I always start, which is, what's your origin story? How did you get into this weird space known as technology, and this even weirder space known as developer relations / advocacy / we get up in front of people and yammer?
How far do we go back?
You can go back as far as you want. We can start in, your parents met and away we go, or you can decide.
That might be a little bit too far.
That might be.
Alrighty. Well, I've had many careers. So I've done a lot of things. I have dabbled in lots of things, but I first came across coding. I think it was 2008 when my then boyfriend, now husband, was learning this newfangled thing called .NET. And he was trying to tell me, I think he was trying to cement his knowledge. And he's like, oh, let me show you this thing. He was doing classic ASP, which was the predecessor, which was more scripty. And he's like, I'm going to show you what an object is. So we made a dog object. And I was like, okay, this is fun. And we had a method, and it made the dog count, wag its tail. And we returned the number of legs and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, this is fun. And I had previously to that wasn't my very first thing. I was doing a degree in graphic design. So I was learning all this graphic-y stuff. And there was this thing called Flash.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember that?
I do.
So I was playing around with Flash, and I was learning ActionScript to make it do more whizzy stuff. So that was kind of my first bit of coding, was ActionScript and Flash. And then I dabbled with C# and then this other thing, and an iPod came out.
I've heard of these.
And an iPhone, and I got this book on iPod development or something, for the it was the iPod thing, the touch screen, iPod Touch. I've still got it in a drawer over there, 2 of them in fact.
I hypothesize that all technologists have a drawer full of cables and old technology things. And if your spouse, significant other is also a technologist, this is not a problem. If your spouse isn't, though, you get the occasional, hey, when are you going to go through that drawer? And do we really need this cable? And I'm like, I don't know. I might. There might be a time.
I still get it. I had a really long 3.5 mil jack cable delivered to my drawer of cables,
right,
from his drawer of cables the other day. I'm like, are you offloading your cables into my cable drawer now? I'm like, okay. Oh, you might find this useful.
Cable drawers, come on. Strict separation.
it's the stack of laptops that I have and computer cases in a cupboard behind me, and with motherboards and RAM in them. Oh, we'll sell those, and as they sit there for 2 years, and then they're outdated, and so we've got all of that. So anyway, we were learning about I was learning about iPods, and I learned about MVVM, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And then that was when I lived in Spain. I was sort of learning about that, and at that time I was riding horses full time. So like in my afternoons when it was too hot to do anything, I'd play with a little bit of this iPod development, and it was fun. And then I moved back to the UK, and I didn't ride horses all the time because I didn't have as many. So I started to teach people on their horses, and I started to teach people to be better horse riders on the floor. So I trained them. I trained to be a personal trainer and a biomechanics coach, so I could have insurance to teach people how to be stronger in their bodies so that they were better on their horses, and address the stuff that they were doing wrong on their horses on the ground. And so I got all this qualifications, and lots of horse riders want to do Pilates. They're very closely related. So I became a Pilates instructor, and then an advanced Pilates instructor, learning all of the equipment. So it basically looks like a torture chamber. It's like something out of
reformers are great. Love them.
Yeah, love reformers. So I had all of that. I opened up a little studio in a porta cabin. Do you know what a porta cabin is? It's like a temporary building that you might find them on a building site. They're like a little cabin on stilts, with a door and some windows, various sizes, like a shipping container, but purpose built. We call those porta cabins. So there was one up at the stables, and I rented it. It was all wonky and damp, so I wallpapered it. I made it into a studio where I could have 4 mats. And also, along with the biomechanics coaching, you need to be hands-on to release tension. So I became a massage therapist and all of this. So all of these skills I was adding. And I lost my dad around that time. And I was like, I don't think I can fanny around riding horses all this time. So maybe I should sell my horses and do something a little bit more meaningful. So I sold all my horses and took all the money from selling my horses to open up an actual Pilates studio. So I found a commercial unit. It was a big room. It was about 50 square meters. So I don't know what that is in your footage stuff. I don't know, something.
That seems fairly big. I don't know.
Yeah. It was, a decent size. So I renovated that myself. I put in my own floor, painted it all. I'm very hands-on with DIY stuff. I'd rather do it myself than pay people. So I laid all the floor, and I got in a sale from a gym that was closing down all of the Pilates equipment, and I put all of that in there. And I had been working at a Pilates studio, and they had like this monthly thing where you filled out a form and you booked onto your course every week, the same class, and it was all very paper. And I was like, I want people to be able to do an online booking system. So Jim, my now husband, I will just call him husband now, he's like, okay, well, I will build you a system.
Sure.
But you have to do the front end, because I had been doing front end design for quite a while, because I did the graphic design, and so I did logo design and graphics, and just like I'd built various websites for myself, just HTML sites. So I did that all along, and I kind of just took that knowledge. I remember way back when I was doing the graphic design, I was learning CSS3 and HTML. So I was comfortable with all of that. So I said, okay, I'll do all the front end. And I taught myself Bootstrap, because Bootstrap was the thing to learn. So we got some template off a site called Wrap Bootstrap, which is really cool. And then we I'm just going to send you a picture of the studio, Nate. And then I don't know if you can share it, but I'll share it, send it there.
Good question.
So I don't know if you share your screen or something, maybe we
I
could
have
do that.
never done that during this session, to be honest with you.
I could do it.
You sure could if you want.
I'm gonna do it.
You've probably forgotten more about StreamYard than I'll ever know. So it's
all right, here we go. I am going to share.
This is a whole new thing.
Here we go. All right. Dun 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 dun.
Okay, so we gotta add that into the stream. Oh, there it is.
That was the Pilates studio.
Wow.
So you can see there, and I laid that floor. And so I had the two reformers. The Cadillac is the thing at the back that looks like a four-poster with chains and fluffy handcuffs and weird stuff. And that weird thing in the back left-hand side was a wooden saddle horse. Okay, so people could bring that. I built that. I designed it and built it from scratch, and it was strong enough to hold 250 pounds person. And you put your saddle on it and you'd sit on it, and then I would correct your posture and we would do stuff in that. So yeah, that's a picture of the studio. And I loved it. It was fantastic. So I was building. Well, I just took control. I'm sorry, Nate.
It's fine, Layla. It's fine. I'd have it no other way, to be honest with you.
Where was I? Yes. So I was building this system, which allowed people to go and buy credits using PayPal. I didn't build that bit. Jim built all of that. But we were, they could go and he taught me how to do the database stuff, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, I made it all pretty and we did all of that. And so people could go and buy credits and spend them and book on to stuff and all of this amazing stuff with a booking system that you would want. Yeah. And we had all the forms that one had to fill out to join, all these health forms. They could do it all there. And then I could go look at them. And I was like, well, I want a list of people who've done X, Y, and Z. And Jim's like, well, you better learn how to do that. Then I was like,
but okay.
So one of the first things I learned to do was link. I actually was working on some epic link queries today. I should just mention that I do .NET and C#. So everything I will talk about is in that realm, unless I mention the dreaded JavaScript.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the dreaded Java, because
no, I've never done Java.
Lots of discussions around the proper way to capitalize things.
My eyes nearly rolled out of my head and along the floor. So
that was the goal.
Back to more important things. Me learning epic link queries, and but first, before I did link, I guess Jim showed me the SQL database, and promptly instilled the fear of God into me about this database. I was so terrified to run any query on this database because he said, you need to be really careful about this. Always check your query. And I'm like,
will the query bite?
I can't do this. I can't do this. I have never dropped a production database. I have been the person who thought they dropped it.
Sure.
Which was horrific. And then I went back through the history and was like, phew, it wasn't me. It was my boss.
Thank the maker, it wasn't me.
It wasn't me. And I was so happy that it wasn't me. So anyway, I'm very fearful of databases. Even now, I'm very fearful. So I learned all of that. And I teach mornings and evenings basically at the Pilates studio, and in the afternoon I'd come and tinker with the site. And I didn't really have much to do in the afternoon. Jim was at work doing software development stuff, and I was like, I still taught some people on horses, so a few days a week I'd do that, and then I'm like, I'll go for a walk with the dog, or I'll do laundry, and I was like, maybe I'll tinker with the website. So I'd be like, I'll learn this, and I started watching videos. It was sort of before YouTube videos were the thing to learn it. So I was on the Microsoft Virtual Academy, which is now Microsoft Learn, but I'd go on there and I'd learn stuff. And then this weird phenomena happened in the UK. I don't know if that happened in the US, but we got these really cheap gyms. Did you get that?
There's like these $10 a month kind of things. I don't know what brand pops into my head, but there's a handful.
They were everywhere, all over the city where I live, all over the UK. This like 10 quid a month, and included in that often was Pilates classes in the studio. Now I would charge £10 per class for a class of 10 with equipment, with obviously someone who's very well trained like me. And very with Pilates, it's very hands-on. You get to touch lots of bodies and correct postures and things like that. And so what I saw were people like, well, why should I come and pay £10 per class when I can pay £10 and have as many classes as I want, not just Pilates in the gym? It doesn't matter that there were like 40 people in their Pilates class and that they had someone who just qualified doing an online course for 2 days or whatever, just to check that box, and would teach them the same thing every week and wouldn't fix their problems. And so my sort of business wouldn't grow. And the other thing that wouldn't grow is, remember I mentioned that other Pilates studio I used to work for? They wouldn't let any of their teachers who taught for them teach for me. They were very, 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 very bitter about me leaving and making my own Pilates studio. Yeah. So I was I couldn't teach all the classes 7 days a week. And people were like, oh, Layla, we only want you. And I'm like, but this person's great. You can have a lesson with them. No, we only want you. And I'm like, well, there's only one of me and I'd like a life, please.
I can't scale.
I really can't scale. And
you just need a few more instances of Layla. Is that not possible? Which cloud provider can give us more instances of Layla?
I'd pay good money for that cloud provider to make more instances of me. So I was like, this isn't going anywhere. And I could see that in so many places, my business wasn't being allowed to grow.
So
there was, at this time, there was a podcast called Code Newbie. I don't know if you've heard of that podcast.
No, that's a new one for me.
And it's all about career changes and people new to the coding. And Jim was listening to it. I'm not really a podcast listener. I'm not very good at listening. I tend to wander with stuff. I need to be able to focus on stuff like that. I need to be able to see as well. And I can't listen. I'm a very visual person. So it's very hard for me just to listen to things. So he said, you should listen to this podcast. I was like, oh, okay, I'll listen to this. And it was about this, she's Australian, she's a journalist, and Amy Simmons, I think her name is. And she changed career. She did that thing. She was a journalist and she taught herself to code. And then she worked at Twitter.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wait,
what?
You can do this. Might I ask that the Pilates studio was earning me a princely sum of £4,500 per annum. I was rolling in it.
The incredibly lucrative life of a Pilates instructor.
Exactly. Oh yeah, so wealthy. So I was like, this is okay. And my projections were like, in maybe 5 years, if I keep growing it and I can hire some people, I might earn 50k per year, maybe, if I really am successful. So that was kind of my aspirations there. And I was like, this is really not going anywhere. And a new gym was earning a decent salary with all the perks, such as not having to do your own taxes, getting paid sick leave, getting paid holiday, working Monday to Friday, and all of these amazing things. And I was like, oh, maybe I could get a software job. So I was like, okay. I bought all of these Learn C# for Dummies, whatever it was, because I'm very good with manuals. Right now on my desk, I have big book. There's another one over here. Yeah, oh god, there's all the. Here's another one. I've got all of these like I'm surrounded by bits of paper right now. So I'm very visual and hands-on things. Okay. I have a million pens as well, right here. Like,
best diagramming tools ever made, right there.
Like, I just feel like I need to show you, like, I'm into killing trees. Okay.
A lot of technologists are. It's kind of a weird thing.
I mean, like, here's a diagram.
Totally understand.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to give you, Simon, hello. An idea that I like to be visual. Okay. So I had all these textbooks, and what I like to do is put all of this kind of, these tabby things into it, so I can find it. You can't do that with a digital book. I only read novels digitally, but anything like textbooky or manually, I have to have a physical copy.
One of the interesting side effects of that, though, for me, is in a digital, whether it's on your iPad or on a tablet or a Kindle or something, when you highlight, you get that perfectly rectangular shape, and there's no weird, and I really like that. And then I was reading a physical book trying to highlight it, and I got so mad at myself because my highlights were very much not that. And I'm like, oh, come on, Nate, just highlight it right, Exactly. It's just they're all over the place, and yeah. So I do appreciate highlighting in and it's a lot easier to search in an electronic book. I can just go search for this phrase, and here it is, as opposed to, well, where is it in this book? I have no idea.
Yeah, but I might not know what the phrase is I'm looking at it, but I might know roughly where in the book it was. You see.
Oh, sure. I've had that experience, right? You're like, I think that was on like page 48. It was on the right side, and it was about halfway
visually
down.
I can see exactly where it was. So I learned from physical books, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn on this. And I remember going on holiday, and I was sitting in a hotel with I'm talking like a doorstop C# book, and all of my paraphernalia that I use for learning, pens and notebooks, and another notebook for the notebooks. It's just, I have a system. I can't tell you what that system is, but I have a system.
You have one. Yep.
So I was learning all of these things, and I was watching all the videos and building systems, and I was like, oh, okay. And I also did free code camp, so I learned all the front end, all the JavaScript. So I was really doing the full stack. And then I was like, when will I be ready to get a job? And then everyone's like, well, you'll never be ready. You'll never feel you're ready. So you just have to do it. So I started looking at some jobs, and I was like, okay, I could do this one, and I could do this one. And I knew that Jim had an agent that he'd used who was quite a nice guy. Will Cantrell is his name. A Prog book. No.
I saw it was a Sam's book, was one of them, wasn't it? The microservices.
It's a book? Sam Newman book, yeah. And so it's an excellent book, really, really good, and really good overarching theory in that.
There are several behind me, Simon. If I lean the right way, there are multiple Prague programmer books behind me as well.
Yeah.
I think most of them are written by Venkat now, near as I can tell. Seems like Dr. Subramaniam is, every time I turn around, putting out yet another Prague prog. So. Yeah.
So I spoke to Will Cantrell, and I said, look, I'm self-taught. I'm not sure what how you would pitch me, and I applied for a few things, and one I had to do like a programming thing, where I had a take-home test, and I had to submit it. I was like, I don't know if I can do that, but I did that and submitted it. So it was over Christmas, and then Will's like, okay, I know there's this small creative agency, and they've got a nice office and a farm, and he might be open to taking you on. So he reached out to him, and he was like, okay, send her over for an interview. So I was like, okay. And then one of the companies I got back to, which was for a year contract, they got back to me, and I was like, okay. So I didn't hear back from the one that I had to do the coding thing for. So off I went to the interview for the contract, and they really liked me, but it was very sort of SEO, not CEO, SEO kind of stuff, not a bit of programming, but a bit of everything else. And I was like,
Sure.
I don't
Not
want to
quite
do
what I'm
that.
looking for.
And then the agency was him, his brother, his stepson, and then another guy. So they're like, well, okay. I showed him my GitHub repos of stuff. He's like, yeah, okay. Well, why don't we give you a go? And if you can't do that, I'm going to, you could just be the office manager. I was like, okay, I guess I'll give you a go. And the other one, he said, I will give you lots of training on the job. And the money he was going to pay me was half the money of the other place. I don't know if it was legal minimum wage either.
Interesting.
So it was, he's like, okay, you're going to earn 15K per annum. And I was like, £15,000. That's a yay! Up from £4,000. And I was like, okay, well, there's a foot in the door. And the other place was going to pay me 30 for a fixed year contract or something like that. So I was like, well, I'd rather have the learning now, because anything's more than £4,500 that I was earning already. So I started in January. I turned up, I was bricking it. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I got there, and he's like, okay, just create a new program and you're going to try and mimic this website. And I had like a mental breakdown, and I was like, are you going to fire me because I don't know how to do this? And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he sat down with me the entire day and taught me lots of stuff. And then I was like, oh, okay. He just gave me a bit of time, and because that's all you need when you're new, is just someone just to let you ask all the stupid questions, and not make you feel stupid for asking them.
Well, I don't think they're stupid questions, just that you don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought about this, and in fact, this just came up recently. I can't remember what context, but you think about the rules to any sport. They're all arbitrary, and you don't know the rules unless someone teaches you the rules, and you don't know the strategy unless someone teaches you the strategy. You know, none of us are born knowing how to do any of these things, right? I mean, basically what we know how to like eat and poop and cry, and that's about it. You know, everything else needs to be layered on top of that. And so it isn't a dumb question. It's, I didn't even know this was a question I had to ask. You know, I'm sure that in any field, well, obviously in any field that exists, right? I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin if you put me in the cockpit of an airplane. I'm like, oh God, this looks really hard. I mean, this kind of looks like a steering wheel, I guess, but
flip,
you know, how do I make the plane go up? You know, so part of it, right, is that you there's some expectation that you're just supposed to know these things, and I don't know where that comes from, because you don't know it till someone teaches it to you. And just because you've been doing this for 5 years or 10 years doesn't mean everybody knows what you know, and you didn't start there either.
Yeah, it's the number of times I've been made to feel stupid because I didn't know something, or I asked something that may be obvious to someone who's been doing it for ages. And it's really, it can ruin you. And I think that's why these egos are, and I think that's why there's so many people who say they suffer from imposter syndrome. It's not them. It's the people who make them feel that way. It's not them. It's never them. And, you know, so this guy, he just let me ask all of these questions, Adam. And 6 months in, after 3 months, he's like, hi, I'm going to give you an extra £1,000 per year. So you're on 16 now. And I was like, okay. But it was a nice office in a farm. So it was quite nice. And I could take my dog into the office with me. She'd sit under the table, it was nice. But they didn't have an office manager because I was coding, and they didn't have anyone cleaning the place
Oh,
or
God.
buying things like toilet roll or anything like that. So I kept my own secret stash of stuff. I had my
Smart.
own milk, I had my own towel, I had my own toilet roll in my own little cubby hole. I was like, okay, I have everything I need for me to be comfortable at work. So I was like, I think I can do better. I think I can earn more money. So I started, and in that meantime, I'd been there like 2 weeks, and the company I'd submitted the coding sample got back to me and said, we'd love you to come for an interview. And I was like, I'm hired. Too slow, losers.
Move faster.
So I started looking for another job, and I interviewed at a few places. One place I went to, they just stared at me. There was one guy who was like the director. He was very nice and affable, and then there was the tech lead. He sat there and just stared at me, and then he would go to the director bloke, and he'd like, we're all here, we're at a table in a boardroom. He'd go, ask her this.
Do you think I can't hear you? Do you think I can't see you? Are you? Yeah, nice.
And so the director would be like, well, Layla, do you blah, blah, blah? And I'd be like, yeah, the answer to this technical question that your tech lead just asked me is this. And they were like, oh, we don't think you've got enough experience. Well, you knew what experience I had coming in, so why bring me through to interview? I think they wanted to look at the spectacle of a girl coder.
Kind of makes me wonder if this tech lead had ever like seen a woman.
I don't think he had. He didn't know how to.
I can't. I can't figure it. How's it possible?
This is it. He wouldn't make eye contact. Didn't think he could communicate with me, and I'm sitting there going, "Well, hell no, I'm not working here with that."
These interviews, turns out, they go both ways. They really do.
Totally do. So I interviewed at another place, and they were really nice, and it was for a fabric and wallpaper company, and they were based here, and they make all of this amazing fabric and wallpaper. There's several brands, and the website was called the Style Library, so it was beautiful. And so I sort of did full stack on there, and I doubled my money with them. And I went there, and it was a more of a proper development team. However, I had to teach them all how to use Git. They had
really interesting.
Yeah, they had some rhyming for what Git was, and we used Git bucket as well, and it had another name in the office, and I had to teach them. Like, I was like, okay, I've submitted this to a branch. Are we going to publish it? Because that's how I'd done it at the small agency. And the team lead said, come sit beside me, Layla. Just pass me over your file structure in the exact file, or put all your changes in the exact file structure of the application. I was like, okay, and zip it up and give it to me. Okay. And he says, come sit beside me. So I go and sit beside him, and he FTPs onto the server and drags my changes onto it.
No.
I was like,
a real rigorous process there. Good build pipeline activity there. We just FTP it up. It's all good.
But why do we have Git? How do you know that this is the same as Git? He's like, oh yeah, but Git is, okay. And then we'd always have breaking changes, and we'd always be doing mad fixes, and it'd be like, oh my God, it's broken. It doesn't work on live. And I'm like,
no one could have predicted this. See, it's stuff like that just amazes me, because you would think as an industry we would learn from previous mistakes. And this kind of came up last week with Cornel, that when we build buildings, like, we've got millennia of experience, and we have building codes, and we have rules, and there's inspectors who come in and make sure you follow the rules. We don't really have any of that. And I get it, because software's only been around like a human generation. We're still kind of making it up as we go. But some of these things are pretty widely known that using source code control is smart, and it makes things simpler and more stable and repeatable. And then you run into these groups like, no, we just use the file system. You're like, still, it's 2023. What's holding you back? Like, what is it? The cost of the open source software? Is it, and you just kind of scratch your head a little bit that some people seem insistent upon continuing to do things in a very suboptimal way, is the politest way I can put it on a family podcast.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience, because I'd come from the little agency where we had staging. I'd push it to Git and it would all go up to staging, and then I'd go and check the staging server, and then there was something else that I could do to and it would just swap them around. I can't remember exactly what I had to do, whether I logged into it or something like that, but I could just swap staging in for production and back again if I needed to. So it was I think it was still on their own server. I think they had a VM on a cloud. It wasn't sort of like an app service or anything. But they had stuff in there, I can't even remember what it was, that allowed them to swap around. And I was like, okay. And I think this place with the FTP even had something like some kind of build pipeline in there that they weren't using, something really expensive. And I was just... the number of times we just had to firefight. I remember I had to live debug on the server somehow. I can't remember how I did it. Like, there was a way that we could attach the IDE to the server, and we're prodding the live server,
debugging,
and I was just like, kill me now.
You would think people would learn from that, but I have also noticed that there are folks in this industry who enjoy the heroics of the firefighting. They welcome the chaos. I mean, I've worked with some people who they wanted to be the ones who ran into the burning building and, hoisted people on their shoulders. Now, what's funny to me is in many cases, management rewards that behavior and they praise the person who did the crazy thing. And then they ignore the fact that, that firefighter is the same person who started the fire, and we should not have had the fire at all. That's the real problem here, is that we didn't put in the process or the approach or just the basic software engineering discipline of how to do this without requiring the heroic effort. And so I do think that is a barrier in some cases. I actually have a student, and this one blew me away. I brought up Git in class recently and made some joke about it. And one of my students said, well, at my work, we are actually on a homegrown solution that my architect basically put together. And I literally was like dumbstruck, because I'm thinking, wait, it's 2023. How is that even possible in 2023 that you're not using Git? I mean, I can understand, like, well, we're on Subversion because of legacy reasons or something, but no, they're on a homegrown thing. It's some scripts that the architect wrote, and same kind of situation, Layla. They have lots of problems with it, but you can't convince that person to change because, well, that's how we've always done it, and it works.
Yeah, there's so many things. Like, between Jim and I, we worked for a lot of companies in our local area, and the horror stories that we can both tell about all this type of stuff, about people stuck in their ways.
Right.
And it's frightening. He was reminding me about this place that he used to work the other day, where they wouldn't let him use any third-party packages at all.
What?
At all.
How do you even build software today without third-party libraries?
I don't know. Like, not, what is it? Not invented here attitude type thing. But we're talking any kind of library. I mean, everything in C# is a library. The whole thing at tree shakes. So you bring in what you need and get rid of everything else. And yeah, they wouldn't allow him to use anything like that. And then he was like, well, that was it. They were like, oh, where all of the applications are on a shared environment, so we don't want to put the others at risk. He's like, why don't you use cloud? And we're like, no. And he's like, cloud is certified for financial services. And they were like,
I don't think that's going to work for us. You don't understand. We're special.
This is it. You know, that was it. I've just had Jim must be watching, because he's just sent me a message about when he was that particular job, the soft furnishings place, where he actually applied for that role of team lead. And it was between him and the guy I ended up working for. And that was nice, because we knew that he'd gone on really well with like the digital director. So he interviewed that, and they really liked him. But they went with the guy who I worked up with, because he'd already been a team lead, and he was maybe 15 years older than Jim. And they went for, well, he's been doing this a lot longer, you know, has on paper, that magic thing, on paper, more experience. And so he got the job. And Jim was already doing things, you know, all of the CI/CD stuff. He was working on cloud, and all of that. So there was, you know, it was really interesting how people go experience. There's this thing, isn't it, where they go, I'm not making any sense. Sorry, it's late. I did warn you, Nate. When it gets to the evening time, my brain isn't as good. I'm very much a morning person. But you're fast asleep in my morning.
I know. Sorry.
So, there's always this thing where it's experience based. You're like, oh, we must have 5 years experience for this job. And when I was applying for jobs, I kept seeing must have 5 years experience. And I was like, yeah, but I can do everything they're asking. And there is this, do you actually have 5 years worth of experience, or do you just have 5 years of 1 year experience, or 5 years of doing the things that you did for 6 months over and over again? And it's trying to break people of that habit of thinking of this employers, prospective employers, of looking at people based on tenure. And this idea of tenure and promotions on tenure drives me up the wall, because no, you can have some guy who's worked there 15 years, or woman, I'm not being sexist here, a person who has worked in the role for 15 years, but they become complacent. They're not pushing themselves. They're not learning the latest way of doing things. And this is in any industry, anywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, take hairdressing. They have my old hairdresser, she kept going on courses for learning new bleaching techniques and new ways of doing it, new products. And she was like, oh, I'm never going to bleach that way again, because it's so harmful. Yet you go to another hairdresser and they're slapping it on the old way with the super strength peroxide, and
that's
your hair's
how
falling
I've always
out.
done it.
Yeah, it's how I was taught 15 years ago in college. So any industry, if you aren't pushing yourself forward and trying to better yourself, and I'm not talking about learning all the time, because that's a road to burnout, but just, you know, a little bit here and a little bit there, and saying, I think I could do better at that. Or just reading around something, go, yes, when I have a spare bit of time, I'm going to learn that one little thing, and you've already pushed yourself ahead. And you know, I think employers need to recognize that the people who seek out self-improvement over the folks who are just sitting there racking up the years on file and being like, yeah, that's the way I've always done it.
Well, it's you know, I've used that quote in some of my material around most developers don't have 10 years of experience. They have 1 year 10 times. And
that's it. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
You said it so much more eloquently.
I don't know who said it. I don't know where that came from, but you know, it's absolutely true. There's lots of folks who are just been kind of repeating those same mistakes. You know, they leave before they experience the consequences of their decisions. And I think that's one aspect of our industry that's hopefully will change. If you were a doctor, a lawyer, many other fields, there is a continuous learning expectation. You have to get so many hours a year of learning new things. And I mean, to be fair, if you went to a doctor and the doctor said, well, let me get my leeches out, you'd be like, whoa, I think it's time for me to find a new doctor. And yet we've got software people who are basically doing that. They're grabbing a bottle of leeches. It's like, you know what? I think I need, they're FTPing up to their production server. We might need some new software people, or more. You might need to be aware that there are other ways of doing things, and this is no longer state of the art. And I don't know why that happens, other than I don't know, maybe we just don't have that incentive to do that. But by the same token, I don't know how you can be in this space and not continually learn things. You just think about like the languages I was taught in school. That's not what I use day in, day out, not even close. I mean, I guess they're descendants, but how can you do this and not learn new things? Kubernetes hasn't been around that long. Docker hasn't been around that long. Microservices, REST, all these things that we talk about, they're going to be something new in a few years. So if you want to have a career, you better figure out how to pick that stuff up.
But I think so many smaller businesses just crank the wheel. That place that Jim used to work at, they were doing classic ASP sites. So that was discontinued in 2002. Okay. In 2015. Wow. So they were still just cranking the wheel. Even now, in my job now as an advocate, I have our customers coming to us and saying, wow, we've got these sites. They call them the .NET person. So I go to the meeting and I'm like, hi, yeah. So what .NET are you running? Oh, well, we've got these classic ASP sites. I'm like, whoa. Sorry, that's a Microsoft technology, but it's not a .NET technology. It doesn't go back up in that way. It's all Microsoft, but I'm down this little path here to modernity. Right. Thank you.
I guess we just look at it as job security, right? I mean, that's got to be part of it for us, And the other thing that I've been thinking about here as you keep bringing these things up, that's part of what I love about what we get to do, because we get to go in and we give our best advice. We do the best we can. And hey, I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow, so if you don't listen to me, that's cool. But
you don't have to work on it.
Good luck to you.
You want to keep doing that? Yeah. Okay. Not me. I got out of that. Thank you.
It's just not a great idea.
No. And I don't know if it's just because I live outside of London and that's what people do. I don't know what it's like outside of the major tech hubs in the US. Are they still like doing the older technologies? Are they cranking that wheel? But I keep seeing stuff coming up, and I mean, classic is really old. I mean, you have web forms, there's still a lot of web forms. At least it's .NET. Sure. But that's still old stuff that they don't really support. But there are ways that you can lift and shift these things, but you've got to ask. There's a reason why we've moved on from all of this. There's the security issues around these older sites. Let's face it. What do you think the difference between our security attack vectors, etc., the difference is between now and sites that were built at the turn of the century? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the sort of argument, and I mean, I've had to deal with this as an architect developer too. You want to upgrade, but the powers that be don't want to risk it, or, that sounds like a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of effort. Well, why don't we just focus on fixing bugs and adding new features, and the customers don't notice and they don't care and they don't want it. There's no value to it. And so we do have to learn how to be persuasive. It isn't just enough to say, but it's new, because you wouldn't, I mean, I've had that kind of discussion with my son sometimes where it's like, well, yeah, why? Well, because it's new. Well,
shiny.
It's shiny, and I get that. Like, we all love our birthday and getting presents and ripping stuff open, but that isn't a justification. If it's working, why should I fix it? Most of us don't buy a new car just because there's a new model year. Like, there's always going to be a new model year, But in software, there are real consequences if you don't upgrade. We saw this with, and I won't name names because it's been a long enough time, but this financial services firm here in the US where they leaked a whole bunch of information on pretty much anybody that has a US Social Security number because they were on an old version of Struts. And it's like, really? You knew that? And somebody pointed it out for like a year, and yeah, good times. Well, hey, Fuel Snable finally showed up. I was wondering when that was going to happen. I don't know. Is it miraculous? I guess that's one way to think about it. We just needed to wait for summertime to kick in. That was
I come out of hibernation. No,
exactly.
I'm here with Nate, but not in general on Twitch. So I'm still over on the tubes.
We keep, threatening to do something, and I think we're going to have to make good on those threats, because I genuinely feel like we've got 2 or 3 good ideas here, and it's just a matter of executing now and hitting the record button next time we're yapping on one of these amazing connective technologies.
It's like doing this kind of thing on a Miro board or Miro board, and sharing it. So this is my architecture diagram, my event storming of one.
Right.
I don't know.
You can always check out Layla's YouTube, right? Let's not forget about that. You've got options. So, it's not live. I mean, we're live now, for the time being, but you can always just go check it out on YouTube. So
exactly.
Nature the beast. So what is that? Dislikes Twitch, but for me, oh yeah, that's a good point. See, I wasn't planning on diving down into daylight saving time or summertime, but I will say this much as someone who lives in a more northern part of the US. If we didn't switch, sun would come up at like 3 a.m, and that's no fun. And sunset would happen at a very different time. So I'm okay with the switch, honestly, because it does optimize daylight in my part of the world. So I get it.
You're like so far south compared to me and Fuel Snable. Like,
fair point.
Hello, all the way down there.
Well, I was in Helsinki earlier this year, and that's, I think, about as far south as you can be and still be inside of Finland. And even then, and this was February, I think, and sunrise wasn't happening till 8 something, and sunset was happening like 4 something. And I just remember texting my wife one point, saying, boy, I couldn't handle being here in December. And then I talked to somebody who lived there, and they're like, oh, just imagine if you were north. Like, most people live north of here.
I mean, for us in winter, it gets light. Well, this is when we're on GMT. It's light around 8ish, and it's getting the sunset's about 3:45. So
that's tough.
And then so Fuel Snable's in Oslo. I mean, you get to see, well, in winter, in summer, when I've only been to Oslo in the summertime, and I remember
nicer in the summer.
I'm sitting in the hotel bar, and I'm like, oh, I should get to bed now. It must be about 11. No, it's 2 o'clock in the morning because the sun has just dipped a little way.
Skirted. Yeah. It's rainy in December. I would never have guessed rainy in December in Oslo, because I always sort of envision Oslo as being a lot similar to the Twin Cities.
No.
Really dark. The dark would bother me, I think.
But they're on the sea, so you get...
Yeah, that's fair. You get that moderating thing. I got none of that. I got no mountains. I got no ocean to moderate anything.
Ugh. It's just cold.
Just cold, snowy.
One of my friends on the .NET circuit, he's a streamer as well, Eagle. He's Danish, but he lives in Iceland, and I caught up with him in February, and I said, do you have any daylight yet? And he's like, an hour. If that. And I was like, he says, we don't have any sunlight. It's better now than it was like a month ago. I was like, okay, I don't think I could cope. And equally, I don't think I could cope with no nighttime as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to visit Iceland. I'm with you, Fuel. I think it would be a
I'd
cool spot
love to
to
go.
go.
I've never
Yeah,
been.
never been. I had a friend of mine, Matthew McCullough, who I can't remember if he literally stayed there or just had like a stopover on a flight to Europe, but it's definitely on my list of places that I would love to get to. But
All
no,
right.
I'm with you. I don't think I could handle it being that dark or that light
Yeah.
for that matter. Same person I was talking to in Finland said, well, yeah, in the summer, then the sun just doesn't set and you don't even need street lights because it just sort of like barely goes under the horizon. And then it's like it's always sort of that dusky thing at worst. Yeah, I think my brain would revolt, but I guess you get used to it.
It's hard. I mean, here it's in the midsummer, it's not properly dark till after 11:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's light at 4:30. Like the birds are screaming their little heads off at 3:30 in the morning as it's that pre-dawn light. And go away.
But that's why they can do the Open Championship and play it in those kind of conditions in Scotland and other places. So
is that golf, Nate?
Yes, that's golf.
Okay.
Yes. It's a very old golf tournament, the Open. That's the appropriate way to refer to it. As many people in the States refer to the Open when they really mean the U.S. Open. If you're going to drop anything, you're referencing then the Open Championship.
Is that at Glen Eagles or St. Andrews?
All of them. Well, I mean, St. Andrews is a classic place to have. It's part of the Rota. See, it just rotates around a handful of very famous golf courses. So,
yes.
It usually ends up at St. Andrews on interesting sort of anniversaries.
Okay.
So I think it was just there recently, if memory serves, and that's a bucket list for anybody that plays golf, in my opinion.
Oh, I've driven through the middle of Glen Eagles often when there's been golf tournaments on as well. And you're like, why are all these people wandering all over the road? Oh,
golf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Golf.
Yeah. Sorry. I apologize for my fellow golf fans, but
I haven't played golf for a very long time.
See, the beauty of golf, and this is something I've tried to communicate to my teenager, is you can play it until you're 90 years old. There are very, very few sports that you can continue to do, frankly, past your mid-20s. Almost everyone I know who, whether it's basketball, soccer, any sort of a higher impact sport, if you play that past a certain age, you're guaranteed to blow out your Achilles. Looking at you, Jakob, so this happened. And he is one of just, I know a handful of people, again, literally anyone I know who played that sport past 30 blows out an Achilles. So I know too many people who've had to have Achilles surgery. So,
yeah, that's
you
the
don't
other
generally
thing.
blow out an Achilles in golf.
No, horse riding. The oldest person at the Olympics in, I don't know, 2016 or something, was a Japanese dressage rider who was in their 80s, I believe, something like that, late 70s or 80s, because dressage is just about that core strength. And it takes a long time to get, it's a strength. It takes a long time to get good at dressage, which was the discipline I did. And it's not like show jumping or eventing where you need nerves or skill. You just need just that strength and endurance to hold everything together. Throwing darts. Oh, I could do that, but you might put your shoulder out. And if you've got frozen shoulder, you're like,
not good. Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, I when I lowered the blind earlier today, my shoulder like pinged for some reason. I'm like, what the heck is that?
Oh, Nate, don't. That's far too old sounding. I lowered the blinds.
But see, this is the thing that sucks about getting older. I don't mind if I do something like, I know when I pick up my golf clubs after setting them down for the winter, there's going to be some soreness associated with getting back into golf, normal modes. I get that. I can accept that. If Christina and I go into a 60-mile bike ride or something and I'm a little sore after that, I expect that. It's when you're like, oh, I slept weird. Oh man, what's going on? I can't turn my head because I slept wrong. I just don't get it. So yeah, I think I'm fine with darts. Yeah, I'm here for it. I just don't have that talent.
You don't want to be anywhere near me if it's darts.
You got to have a much wider angle. It's like, no, stay away. Stay away. I'm sore before I even start. Can relate.
Yeah, I can relate.
But it beats the alternatives. So
we're still alive.
Do they give the horses medals in the Olympics?
No.
I hope they do. Really, it
No.
just goes to the writer?
Here's
I
a
mean, that seems
sugar lump
unfair.
and a pat.
Thank you for all your hard work, horse. We're gonna give the person who is back here on your back. They get the medal. It's good.
Yeah, it's hard bloody work doing that as well.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Oh
So,
man. So
yeah.
do you think we're getting better at this software thing? I mean, every time I run into these stories of, and then we FTP'd the code to production, and you kind of go, oh yeah, we got a long way to go, don't we?
I think in many ways we are getting better, but the problem is, I think people like us, not us in particular, but advocates and evangelists, are really responsible for this constant, oh my God, I've got to learn the new thing, and making things up for the sake of it. Okay. I'll give you an example. A couple I can probably dig out, and I'm sure you can. Let's take .NET. .NET used to have releases as and when it was bloody ready. Okay. You'll get a release when we've got some things to release. Now we have an annual release. Like, I'm not talking like, we're talking, here's a new version. So we have every even version is an LTS, and then every other one is not. So now every November we get a new version of .NET. And I looked at the last version. I'm going to get so much hate for this if anyone from .NET watches this. I looked at last November's release and I'm like, why? And they'll change something. I see things being changed for the sake of it. I opened up a project that was using, I don't know, a Cosmos DB API, okay? And I was using the API. This application was all working. I upgraded my stuff and oh no, there's breaking changes. You can't use that API anymore. You have to change it all. And you just say, but why? Why change things for the sake of it? And I think people who are working on products and people like us advocates, we need to find something to talk about at a conference. Here's this latest thing that you must try, because I'm trying to make it sound compelling so we get to stand on stage and tell you about it, because we found it on some like obscure rabbit hole that we fell down, as one does with coding, and we're like, oh, this is cool, I'm going to make a whole conference talk out of this, and I need to pitch it to you and you all need to learn it. Nobody needs to learn it. It's like microservices. Who really needs to learn microservices? I'm sorry, who needs to do microservices like this? Like,
hang on, let me text Sam and get his thoughts on this. Give me a minute.
Here is the developer community. Okay. All right. I think if I got my microscope out, there might be a tiny little notch here, like teeny weeny, of people who need to know about microservices. Yet, oh, look at that. That's disappearing. How cool is that? Ooh, sorry. Yet, we keep going, microservices, decompose your applications, blah, 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 do this, do that, build scale, vertical, horizontal. Yes.
Everyone needs to build at Google scale. Yeah, I agree, Fuel. You're not wrong.
And we're telling people this, and then people get this like, oh my God, I need to know this. Oh my goodness. And worse, CEOs come in and go,
yeah, that's when it gets dangerous.
I've heard about this newfangled thing called microservices that we must be doing. And you're like,
we need them.
You've got
we need them yesterday.
1,000 customers a year.
Yeah.
That's this constant thing. So yes, a lot of things go forward, but people, like, there are, like at VMware, we've got people working on Spring, employed people on Spring, open source still. Microsoft has employed people working on .NET, but it's still open source. These people need to stay, like, they need to keep producing features to keep themselves employed, and to keep making people move from other languages to these languages. So they need to keep adding things for the sake of adding things and tweaking things for a nanosecond more performance. And so you just get this endless cycle of, yes, we're changing, everything's moving forward. And the rest of everyone else is like trying to keep up. But you just do not need to be on that bleeding edge or the cutting edge or anywhere near the edge. So that's it.
That's a good point. And I do think there are far too many people who practice resume driven development, right? Where it's just, I need to do this because I want to put it on my CV. And, I've seen that with countless times in my career. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. We must use insert esoteric technology here because I want to put it on my resume and I think it'd be fun and cool. Now I do think there is that I guess conflict's a strong word, but that tension, because we do need to move things forward when it comes to, reactive programming. Well, that's a little different than the way we've done it before. We actually have to create libraries and other things that can help you support that. And there are use cases where that's useful. And, I think the big challenge and part of what I feel like we try to do is cut through some of that confusion and help people understand. I mean, I certainly try to spend a lot of time on, hey, when should you use this thing? As opposed to just, here's this great new thing, but I don't know that that's as widely spread in our industry as it probably needs to be.
No, I have a lovely horror story about that. I worked on a huge application and loads of APIs, and we had this young team lead, a technical lead, and he liked to experiment with stuff. So I was going through everything. No, I'm not sure about that, Fields Naval.
I don't think we can ever say good things about VB. I'm sorry. I think that we're contractually obligated to make fun of VB where possible.
Zipping that. So I'm going through all these APIs. Everything's RESTful. Okay. Apart from, it's still REST, but standard APIs are all of this that I'm used to working with. And then I have to go and touch this one API, just one in hundreds that uses Hatios. And I was like, WTF is this? Mm-hmm. And they're like, I wanted to play with it and
its own thing.
Yeah. And he was like, I just wanted to and have a go and see how it works and see if it might be a good option. Mm-hmm. And I said, do you not think that would have been good in a spike?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That never occurred to me.
And I'm like, why did you put this in our production code? What were you thinking? To my technical lead.
I wasn't.
So,
See, the other interesting piece of this is something that I was literally just talking to my grad students about this past weekend. I have found the older I get, the more interested I am in these more evergreen kinds of things. One of the best books, frankly, on how to be good at software is How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book is older than you and I probably combined in terms of when that I don't even know when that material first came out, but it certainly is not new. Reading that, I've had multiple people that I've recommended that to, and they come back to me 6 months later, a year later, like, you're absolutely, wow, that just completely blew me away. And it's old stuff. I am more interested in that as I get older, because the constant rat race of, there's a new feature, there's a new this, it gets kind of old after a while. You get tired of it. And I wish developers would have a little more of a fixation on these things that are going to benefit them, not for the next 6 months, but for the rest of their career, and going to help them continue to move forward, get promotions, get more responsibility, etc. Instead of being so fixated on, oh my God, what's in the latest edition of insert whatever here. Oh, okay. I got to see this. So Fuel says you're ready to join the Cranky Club.
I'm already well in there. Okay.
Charter member.
I am in there because I don't like people. I'm an introvert. I don't like the general public. I don't like to be anywhere near people. And I'm not talking about individuals.
Might be in the wrong line of work.
No, I can tolerate people, but the population, the broader population, I'm out there. I am well in my cranky, like waving my stick. You litter bugs, pick up after you. Oh my God. Don't get me started. I could rage out about the general public. I know. Like, there's people, and then there's
Yes,
people.
yes. I love instances of people. I
Yes,
hate the nebulous people.
the masses.
Dislike. I shouldn't say hate. Hate's cruel, but yes, I'm with you.
I don't suffer fools gladly, and that's it. And there are a lot of foolish people
Mhm,
out there,
mhm.
and I'm just not very good at putting a brave face on it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. I one of my golf buddies made that comment to me several years ago. He's looking at me, he's like, Nate, you don't suffer fools well, do you? I said, nope. That is not a skill that I that I possess in any amount of
No.
volume, at least.
So I have this tolerance scale. Okay,
Yeah,
it goes up, 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 and if I go back here, hang on, it goes up. My tolerance, it goes up, and then it's
yeah.
like a roller coaster. I can I'm tolerant. Don't think anyone does like people. Oh, there's plenty of people that like people. The
Yeah,
weirdos out
yeah.
there.
Oh, okay. Well, fuel. Okay, this is a good point. Who is a fool is relative, because I'm certain that I've done and said things where I look like the complete idiot. So I mean, not you, Layla. I know that, but
There's tomfoolery and foolishness and acting
mm,
the fool, and then there is just plain fools. And I don't mean that in a fun way. I mean, is there an ounce of common sense, decency,
sure.
education, like, respect, all of these things in that yeah, I won't go down this rabbit hole, Nate, because we'll be here till like I start chewing on this
Midnight.
orange peel for my dinner.
Well, to your point, my son, the very first time, basically, he drove by himself somewhere. He comes back in the house and he's like, "People are stupid." I'm like, "What happened?" There is a divided road near our house, and so it's one side is westbound, one side's eastbound, and then there's the divider in the middle. And to be fair, when that road first opened up, it was not that. It was just two lanes next to each other,
Mm-hmm.
eastbound, westbound traffic. And 5 or 6 years ago, they changed that, and it's been divided ever since. And so my son was coming home, he was going westbound, and he sees this person's going to come out of this development. And at that intersection, the only thing that person can do is turn right. It's a one way. And so Everett sees him and thinks, oh, he'll probably pull out in front of me. And he said the guy did, except he turned right into me because he went the wrong way down the one way. Now, Everett was far enough away that no collision happened or anything. But what's amazing to me is that there are big signs, like literally where that person was stopped, just eye level. There's a big sign that says one way pointing, to the right. And then there's a big do not enter sign. And I would have thought, as someone who's driven before, when you look to the left and the right, oh, hey, there's a car here. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why that car is in that lane going that direction. That's the lane I should be driving in. Wouldn't you maybe kind of like take a pause and process, and then, oh, there's a one-way sign here. Oh God, I didn't realize this. It's just the people are just like, well, I'm just going to turn left. So
We have that all the time here as well, because we've got it
but you
round.
drive on the other side of the road.
No,
So
the city centre has two it's a dual carriageway, but at 30.
okay.
And so you've got two lanes going that way, then a big centre divide, and then two lanes going the other way. And people are forever pulling out of the shopping centre, the shopping mall, and going the wrong way down there. And, you'll be driving down and there's someone driving at you, and you have to just go slow, flash them and be like, and then they look panic stricken.
Everyone at one time has done that by mistake and been like, oh crap, I'm going the wrong way on a one way. I remember
I've driven around
in
the
college,
roundabout the wrong way once.
Sure. I mean, it can happen, but there are signs. And it's one thing if you're on like a residential street and you don't realize that it's a one way because they're not always marked very well. But this one is pretty clear,
Yeah.
and so it is amazing. And oh yeah, conspiracy theories fuel. We could spend a lot of time on that. That's probably for a whole different show. But
we start a new Twitch stream for that one.
right, debunking, and why is it that humans seem to love themselves some conspiracy theories? And yeah, they think likewise, they think I am smart but misled. Yes, because they have found some truth that you have yet to discover. Yeah. Anyway. Well, so let's see here. I know you and I had a couple of things. We might as well at least touch upon the fact that you are going to be live in person doing a workshop that you're very excited about, and
Yes.
I've gotten to see just a little taste of it, so I'm excited for you there. Good luck. So
Yes.
we've got that coming up. Anything you want to say about how that's going?
Yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna cover everything I want to cover in it. It's gonna be like everyone who's coming to that workshop is gonna be having a fire hose shoved in their face. Full crank. Um I hope that's what it feels like it's gonna be.
That's the
Maybe they'll
goal.
be like, it's a trickle, Layla. What? It's a trickle. Give us more information. But I'm hoping they're going to feel like it's a fire hose and that they're going to drown.
That's the goal.
So I'm hoping that that's it. So, not that I wish them to drown in the wonders of knowledge. So I'm quite excited by that. But that's going to be a lovely trip because my friend Irina runs that conference. She's one of my closest friends on the circuit, the speaker circuit. And so we're going to that. She's having a barbecue at her house. And then apparently we're going over to Moldova to a winery. So that sounds like fun. So it should be a nice trip. And it's in April, so it should be warmer, maybe. I
Weather
don't
will be
know.
better by then.
Hopefully.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
So that should be nice. So I'm very excited about doing this. There's a lot of people signed up. So that's kind of scary and cool and awesome and terrifying. But it's okay. So
Cool. Mostly cool.
Cool.
What could possibly go wrong?
It's like drinking Dr. Pepper.
It's probably fine. What's the worst that could happen? So you've got a continuous learning deep dive coming up here in a couple of days.
Yeah, that's on
the first time hearing about that was when we hopped on this morning. So what's going on there?
I'm hosting it. It's a panel.
Okay.
We've got hello, Luce. Luce was amazing and helped me with Mongo stuff today. Solved all my problems. Amazing. So big shout out to Luce. So the panel is we're going to be talking about learning. And so kind of what we touched on earlier, how as a developer do you have to keep learning all of these things, approaches to learning about it. We've got 3 awesome guests, one of which is my very good friend Alyssa Michael. So that should be a hoot. And it's all going to be just these industry folks who have been learning, who teach people, and how they cover this whole thing that we as developers have to do, which is that continuous learning. We're always learning, like we said. So I'm hoping that I'm going to sort of pry into when they think it's too much and how they moderate themselves and keep that stress level down. That's something that I want to dig into as the panel host, and just be like, yeah, she's amazing. I love Alyssa. And just kind of say, why do you need to learn this? And I think that's it. There's this temptation to learn all the things, learn everything. And I get stuck by that because I want to know everything. I need to know every little detail. I want to know this and that. I'm like a sponge, a super absorbent sponge that must be sucking in knowledge all the time. And then I go bang. So I want to know how they moderate that and stop when the sponge is saturated, how they just let it percolate out and dry out a little bit before it starts sucking again. So.
Well, the other really interesting aspect of this, something I've talked a lot about in the past, is how do you know where to spend your time? Because there's such a massive rushing river, ocean, huge body of water, all these things that you could be playing with, and you only have so much time. And so how do you decide personally for you, where do you want to spend that time? And I think you're also hitting at a really important piece, which is and I've got this great tweet thread I can try to find and send you about learning shouldn't be a point of stress in your life. And it's okay to wait until you need it. There's nothing wrong with just-in-time learning. I think those are the 2 things to balance, right? Is being able to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on, not drowning in it, knowing what makes sense for you, where you want to spend your time and energy, and then making sure that it's okay to just, yeah, I know I'm going to need to learn that, but not right now. I'll learn that in 6 months or a year, and that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's also, I think people should vary their learning as well.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think, it's that old adage of a change is as good as a rest. And learning something different can stimulate your brain in new ways, or
Right.
approaching learning from a different angle is really amazing. And not just doing it, this all boils down to not doing things the way you've always done them because you've always done them that way. So it's really so important to stimulate our brains. Our brains don't like doing the same thing over and over again. They like to change it. We get bored. The attention span gets shorter and shorter. So you have to mix it up.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That's also why we shouldn't be doing deploys via FTP, because human beings never do the same thing twice. We're incapable of it. The computers are really good at being stupid.
Yes. Let them do the stupid stuff.
They'll do the same thing every darn time. They won't get bored. They won't fat finger. They're going to keep, if you tell them to do these 7 commands, it's going to do all 7.
And
again, there's an
again.
error. They'll do it over and over and over again. So yeah, so that's a great point, right? And that's one of those things that I've tried to encourage people to do, and it's hard, but to learn something that's very different from what you do day in, day out. So learning a language that works in a different way, that has completely different approaches, is really good for stretching your brain. I remember a good friend of mine was learning Ruby, and he knew he wasn't going to get to use it on the job, but he told me a year later, he's like, it changed the way I write Java code. I write my Java code in a different way because I learned Ruby, and some of the things that it did to how I think and how I approach problems has affected the way I write my code in a positive way. And I think that's an under appreciated benefit of learning these things.
Absolutely. I think there's so much to also think about why you need to learn something. And I guess it can be the resume side of it, but that's really valid. If there are no Java companies hiring in your area, why learn Java or any other language? So in where I live, there are a lot of .NET companies because we have a lot of headquarters and finance and stuff here. And so there's a lot of .NET development here. So it makes sense to do .NET. And so that can drive your learning. But you can upskill when you're looking to change jobs. And there's this thing that always is, if someone starts upskilling a lot in an engineering department, you've got to think, well, maybe they're on their way out.
Yeah, they're getting itchy. But that's a good point, Fuel, that when you learn things, it feels weird. And if it doesn't feel weird, it might be a problem. I can certainly attest to that when it comes to golf. If you're taking a golf lesson and it doesn't feel a little weird, then you're not making the change. There's just no getting around that. It's got to feel wrong for a period of time before it feels right. So nature of the beast. But
yeah.
Oh, good times. Well, I know from past experience, like a week ago, that you and I could probably talk for another 2 or 3 hours, but I know that you need to eat, and it's dinner time, and so I won't steal any more of your time, my dear friend. So
that's it. I just had a dog come and nudge my hand like, our dinner time was an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, the cats keep kind of like looking around, and I think Han decided, for some strange reason, I have on the shelf behind me, there is a little stuffed animal that I got at KCDC last year that Han has apparently now discovered and has decided it needs to be a toy, and so Christine rescued my little stuffed animal from Han's clutches, but he hadn't touched it, and we were on vacation. We came back, and I noticed that it wasn't on its shelf, and so clearly that was part of something he must have learned while we were gone, in his boredom, not having his human couches around.
Outrage that you dared leave him.
How dare you? And they've become accustomed to certain things, and yes, exactly. Well, you know what they say, dogs have owners, cats have staff.
Yes. Although I think one of my dogs is like a cat dog. And I think it's a breed thing, because I know that there's the breeder where we got cookies. She said, "Oh, they're incredibly like cats, don't you think?" And I was like, "Now that you say it."
Yeah, they're much more cat-like. Yeah, it is possible, Fuel, that we are indeed on the murder list for the cats. It's possible. I think Chewie's forgiven us. I think Han's still a little sus about us.
He's a little bit of a prima donna, though, isn't he?
He is.
Han?
He is. Yeah. Well, he's the reason why I have to have my little stand behind me, because
Yeah.
otherwise, he gets
On
problematic
your
when
head.
I'm worried. Well, earlier before you and I hopped on, he was deciding he needed to pair with me, and so that was various aspects of him laying on around near my laptop. And
do you have this thing where Cookie likes to lie on my desk mat, and then I lose the use of this arm because this is her headrest arm, and I'm like, I can't type.
Yeah. Last week, Han was using one of my wrist rests as a pillow, and then the other one that's fun is he's like a ninja. You can't hear him, and so I shifted my chair slightly, and then heard that. I caught part of his tail in the wheel of my chair, and there was a little tuft of hair in there. Felt kind of bad, and I'm like, sorry, kitty. Maybe don't sit right next to the tires. Maybe.
Definitely on the murder list now.
1,000%.
Oh, you better watch your back, big boy.
I'm just saying, Layla, if you don't hear from me for a while, there's a decent chance the cat did it. All
okay.
Right?
Noted.
Avenge me, Layla.
Noted.
Avenge me.
I'm not going anywhere near the killer cats. But we should definitely have another go at doing our code katas. They were so fun, and do that again, because as you say, you and I can just go blah 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 for hours. Maybe Jakob might get a word in edgeways if we have to stop for a drink or a breath.
Yes, I was going to say, if one of us needs to take a sip of water or something, then yes, Jakob will.
It would have to be at the same time. Like synchronized sipping, and then he can get a word in to talk about how to divvy up models the wrong way.
See, this is what I love about this space, right? Is we get very opinionated about things that ultimately may not really matter, like capitalization or where do the brackets go, or tabs versus spaces.
There's a very good reason for tabs versus spaces for screen readers.
Completely. Yeah. I mean, I know there are certainly some aspects of that, but the way we gravitate towards it is if it's some kind of absolute law of physics that this is, there is no debate because it is a law of the editor. I don't know. I mean, it is interesting how we can get so locked. It becomes an identity thing for some of us. Let's just be clear.
As long as my code is readable, maintainable, and other people can come along and use it, that's what counts.
That should be the important thing, right?
Yeah.
That should be the important thing.
And that Java does it wrong.
I mean, I'm pretty sure C# does it wrong, because
whatever. There are quite a few .NET people in this chat. Here comes another one who will fight with me.
I mean, I guess we can have this debate about the capitalization rules and why
Java is
does
wrong. Yeah, it's fine. There's enough .NET people in this chat. I can confidently say.
Hang on, let me get Jakob. I need reinforcements. Yes, Java bashing. Oh, come now.
Yes, go Napalm.
I think, why can't we all just get along? They're just tools. And how much did C# borrow from Java again? I mean, how come they're virtually identical languages?
They just need to update.
That's a little much. I mean, terrible, really?
It all looks very similar. When Jakob tried to teach me some Java and Spring, it looks so similar. I mean, when I look at some of the Java, I can't tell, apart from the you use camel case as opposed to Pascal case, I can't tell the difference. It all looks the same.
Right.
So
that's always been where I've had my mental breakdown, is reading it going, wait, how come it's not doing this? Oh, that's right, because it's C#, not Java.
Yeah, they're so similar. There's nothing much to pick from them. But it's the same with any language. I can read any language. It is just the fact that it's knowing what the frameworks do. And that is a perfect example. What Napalm said is that there's a whole load of annotation and configuration that you need to know. And the same in C#, but we just do it differently. And it's not the language, it's the frameworks that make it difficult to switch from one to the other.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of difference once you get into some of that, more nitty gritty practical stuff. But to your point, Napalm, there's every language, every framework has those sort of nuance to it, and those forms, if you will, that can be challenging, and that does sort of come with the paycheck, as they say. I will say that for a long time, Java adhered much too closely to the configuration over convention approach. And I'm adamantly of the opinion that the lasting sort of impact of Rails was breaking that and making people understand that convention actually is pretty darn powerful. Not to be confused with significant white space, which can be its own ball of pain, but understanding that if we're always going to put it in this folder, then let's just make that the default and not have to put in that exact same boilerplate all the time. But
I love the strong convention that we have in C#, but there's also the way that you can break that convention to make it your own, which is it's that flexibility. But look, we're going off again. I need to go and have my dinner. The dogs are getting me.
See, spring's a divider, I guess.
We
I don't know if I agree
again.
completely with that fuel, but to each your own, and may we live in interesting times. But
yes.
Well, Layla, as always, this has been a pleasure, my friend, and thanks for hanging out with me. We'll have to do this again, and let me know when you want to have another
inviting me on.
workshop. I was saving this conversation, Layla. I didn't want to rush it. I knew it was going to be a good discussion. And I've been fortunate. I've had some very great guests, and I'm like, well, I'm going to savor that. I'm just going to wait until the perfect moment. And then it happened. And I also recall someone I did ask you at one point, and I kind of got a very snooty response. I think you were being grumpy with me because I wasn't. Because I think you were joking with me, but it's fine.
You told me when I've got a space. So here we are. Here's the space.
I think at the time I didn't, to be fair.
Thank you.
It's been lovely.
And
I am guardedly optimistic you and I are going to be in the same meet space sometime in 23. I hope that happens. If it doesn't, I'm going to be very sad. I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic, Layla. I'm trying, okay?
To answer Fuel Snables, this is my final answer for questions now. I have not done anything with hot reload because I've been working in the depths of the back end, so I'm not really doing anything in the front end which would require hot reload. So I don't know, that kind of worms. We're not going there.
All right, that's probably wise, but I know along with several of us will be at DevNexus next week. I know that for a fact, so I will not be doing any broadcasting. We got to find a way to get you to DevNexus one of these years because it's such a fun show. It's a great city. You would be around a lot of Java developers though, just to temper your feelings a bit, but it is fun. There's no two ways about it. So
one day it'll
happen. But in the meantime, check out Layla on YouTube. Go see her amazing workshop. I know it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I'm very excited for you. And I'm actually pretty jazzed about this deep dive. I'm a little insulted I wasn't asked to be a part of that panel because that's like right in my wheelhouse. But that's fine. I know.
Come hang out. Come be asking questions.
I can do that. I can lurk, as they say. But I will be back in a couple of weeks with Valerie Regas. I'm excited about that, and assuming that the technical gods actually cooperate with me, and we'll see what happens. And I was trying to unleash super raging Layla, and Napalm says that's easy parallels. So
it's very easy to get a raging Layla. Okay, there's a lot of things that just trigger the Layla rage. Okay, we spoke about it earlier. People.
We all have those touch points, don't we? Those things that just here we go. This will get them off on a tangent.
That's it. And hot reload is so off my rage radar now because I've raged and raged and
Enraged.
raged.
That's all good. It's
Yeah.
all good.
And it's still piling, steaming pile.
Well, my friend, thank you so much. I do
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Nate.
And I look forward to chatting with you in the very near future about your workshop and other things. And
Yes.
we've
And
got
have a
things we
yeah,
have things in the
pipeline.
hopper. We have
Yes.
ideas. We're
Yeah,
ruminating. So I
for
think there's
sure.
more to come here. I like our odds. I like what we've been. I smell what the rock's cooking or something.
Woohoo. I've had a wonderful time. Thank you so much for hosting me, Nate. It's been a delight. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and listening to me rant for an hour and 36 minutes. And
Who
have a
knew we
great
could
time at
go
Dev
for?
Nexus.
I will. Thank you very much.